House us therefore in the powdering tub of thy mercy,
that we may be tripes fit for the heavenly table.
Welcome, Meatsmiths. You are listening to a Meatsmith Harvest,
restoring husbandry to prosperity
through the traditions of our fathers.
This Farmstead Meatsmith production is made possible by you. If you like it, please consider supporting our team by going to patreon.com/Meatsmith and donating at a level you'd enjoy giving at. Your gift helps us increase the quality and quantity of all our free media education. Thank you, and happy harvesting. We are in, what would you call it? Assumption Tide?
Assumption Tide. Well, yeah, Lady Mess, Lady Tide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We just had the Assumption. Actually, I think this might be the octave day.
No. We're halfway through.
We're halfway?
Yeah.
Oh, it was Tuesday.
It was 15th, yeah.
Right. Never mind. Anyway, the oldest Marian feast. This one, the Assumption.
Mm-hmm. High summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, yeah, we need her intercession right now. I feel like our family's going through kind of a lot. But it kind of seems to happen, a lot of things seem to happen right around high Marian feast days for us.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're good and triumphant, and sometimes they are hard.
Yes.
But they're always good and climactic and fruitful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to mention triumphant, because I think this is, of all the things that Mary did, the Assumption was the most triumphant. I think I've heard that somewhere.
I've heard that it was more, well, I don't know the right word, but Father Ripperger has a great
That's where I heard
thing about it, about it being in some ways even more beautiful than the ascension of our Lord.
Oh, really?
Because all of the saints that were released from purgatory were there.
Oh, there weren't as many, right?
Yeah, there wouldn't have been as many or something. Yeah. Right. There's probably 20, 30 years of saints that died between his and her Assumption. So the entrance into heaven would have been a little bit more grand.
Yeah. And it's no accident that the most beautiful music that has ever been composed, I was going to say in the church, but I'm going to go ahead and say in the universe and for all time, is composed to the Mother of God, to Mary.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like not even debatable. It's not. Once you hear them, and you know what? We don't hear them. We don't hear this music. The chant. You have to go search for it. But when you find it, it's totally conclusive and it's undebatable. It's an undebatable topic, and it's so beautiful. And one of the things that we got to do in our Scola was chant Ave Regina Serena, Virgo Serena, in the church during, within the octave of the Assumption. Or actually it was on the eve. It was on the eve of the Assumption, which was very appropriate and beautiful.
Would it be appropriate to say she's like the ultimate muse? Or would that be too profane of a thing to say? Just like so. as a way for people to understand like why she evokes such beautiful music.
Yeah, well, I don't know. She's the most beautiful, and that is, you can't really argue with beauty. It's one of those things that's beyond debate, because it's instantly compelling. All you have to do is behold it, and so that's the kind of things. Those are the kinds of things we compose for her, and it's also, the human spirit, I think, has a particular and special love for the Mother, and it's very special, but also for the Queen simultaneously. And
it's not purely sentimental. It's also very regal. Sometimes it's very warrior-like. I mean, it can be.
Yeah.
That element is there too in her queenship. Yeah. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
We're actually gonna talk about Gregorian chant today.
Oh dear.
I thought we'd divert a little bit from the topics that we have been tackling. They've been wonderful and very kind of based around life-altering changes and, talking about community and very philosophical and, and we tend to like talking about important things, but I wanted to shift a little bit today and chat about things that you've been doing with all your spare time, which is not much, but it is summer. And so, in addition to just basically keeping the farm together, it is our off season in the sense that we're not doing classes right now. We're trying to sell classes, but we're home. You're homesteading. You're growing the animals, which is no small task. That we will be harvesting in the fall, but then at the same time, kind of expanding your amateurish repertoire and right now it's taking form in Scola and jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So they're both very kind of different, but both very human endeavors. And I just think, you could talk about underwater basket weaving and make it come alive for me. So I just think that these kinds of topics can relate to anyone in the sense that they teach us about life.
Well, they've become part of our formation of our children and ourselves for sure, which is the thing that the home does. I mean, we're supposed to be, if homesteading has any telos, it's the formation of souls. Yeah. And come to find out, we need to adorn our souls with all the virtues. And we tend to focus on the erstwhile virtue of harvesting animals to sustain one's own being through the power of nutrition. And we've kind of lost that one. And I think it can be rightly outsourced in certain contexts, but there's definitely a sacrifice made, something lost, something excised from the human soul when we are no longer able to do that, or we are so far removed from it that we can't even imagine doing it, and in fact are grossed out and horrified by it. Which is interesting, actually. It reminds me, I was reading about guilds a little bit this morning. And how one of the major shifts during the French Revolution era, when they were destroying all the things, and one of the things that they destroyed in a targeted, explicit policy way was guilds. Immediately, they had to dismantle all of the guilds. And so they did. And but before that, there was this unique thing where the retail space was not separate from the workshop. Oh. Whatever it was. Now, we're just getting a tangent here. We do have to mention our classes and stuff, but it's really interesting that during, when the guilds kind of held sway and were a major influence and means of organizing smaller bodies of people, body within a body within a body. There was no clear division. There wasn't this enormous apparatus that was purely commercial, if you know what I mean. Like, here's the retail space. It's a space where only the exchange is made.
Like a big Walmart.
Au contraire, if you wanted to buy meat, you went to the slaughterhouse.
Oh, wow.
It happened in the street, in the shambles in England, and they put the meat on the shelves. But what they were also doing at those spaces was killing the animals and processing them. So even if you did buy all your meat or all your candles or whatever it was, and you were not engaged directly in the production of those things, you could not acquire them without being acquainted with the process by which they're produced. Mm-hmm. Because there wasn't this hard curtain, this hard dividing line, this backstage to consuming products and buying things. Mm-hmm. You saw it. Mm-hmm. And you saw the members of the guild back there working. And it was very clear that their wares were the result of that process that's right there. Mm. And you see it. Mm-hmm. There wasn't this division.
Transparency.
Yeah. And so at least then you would have the appreciation for the mason or for the candle maker or for the butcher. Mm-hmm. Because you saw them work. Mm-hmm. And you might have seen that, there's actually just 2 racks of spare ribs on a pig. Because you'd see the pig right there. Uh-huh. And you'd see the butcher cut it up for you right mm-hmm. there. Not 7. Mm. And you would know, and this is, I feel like you see this in remnants in peasant culture, in the sagacious housewife of England in the early 20th century, where she knew how, she had an acquaintance with livestock. She had understanding of fresh meat and meat that had been hanging around for a while in an insalubrious manner. And she could decide rightly. So much of the initial retail spaces had to appeal to that sagacity. And they had this intimate connection to the slaughterhouse again. We've talked about it before, but the backdressing of lambs, when they would hang the lamb carcasses. I mean, just look at old pictures of British butcher shops. Mm-hmm. All the carcasses are hanging out in the street mm-hmm. for display, full carcasses. Mm-hmm. The assumption there is that the consumer wanted to see the whole carcass to judge the health of the animal and be able to get the best, most nutritious meat for their family. Mm-hmm. Because they did not want something that was totally alienated from the process that produced it or the people. But anyway, today we prefer particular lighting and certain colors that instigate consumerism. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where we're at. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, because we have lost the virtue or even the appreciation of the virtue of harvesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine if people actually saw what a chicken looked like? That is the origin of the chicken breasts that we all want, so plump and
skinless. And
mm-hmm. I mean, it's quite an imbalanced chicken that you find when it's still alive.
Well, I think it's a fetish. That's what's weird.
Right.
It's a little gross, but that's like the definite, that's what a fetish is. Mm-hmm. It's to
isolate
one thing mm-hmm. as an obsession to the neglect of the rest of the creature. Yeah. And so you don't actually like chicken. Mm-hmm. You don't.
Right, yeah.
You like bland, dry, insipid mm-hmm. breast meat. And it's even the tradition of the holistic consumer who wants the whole animal and who can judge it is maintained in some parts of Europe, where you can get poultry that still has feathers on it.
Right.
And it's arranged that way. It's intentional. It's aesthetic. It's beautiful. It's not an insult to the customer, to the consumer. They want to see that the wattle and the comb are deep and red. Mm-hmm. That's a healthy bird. Mm-hmm. And it also verifies that, it's a poulet breast or a certain breed or something relative to its color.
Yeah. Can that be a good segue then to promote our classes?
Yes.
As a way to...
Speaking of being acquainted with the harvesting of animals.
Pull back the curtain.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what the classes are all about.
Yeah, we have 3 pork classes and 1 lamb class this fall in November, I think.
And just a little bit into December.
Yeah.
And I think the lamb class is October.
Okay. Yeah. The lamb class is halfway full, so there's 4 more spots. I just looked it up this morning, so all the numbers are in my head. The family pig classes are 30% filled. So there's still quite a bit of space in them, but I have a feeling they will not be there for long this summer. So I would grab those up as quick as you can, and it'll be November, December, right before the holidays. That's the time to kill pigs, as we've said before. Mm-hmm. And it's wonderful weather here in Oklahoma that time of year.
It's true. Sometimes it stays warm but cool in the evenings. But the that is the seasonal. I always love it when we do pig classes seasonally.
Yeah.
When our ancestors used to kill pigs, because then it requires less caveats to traditional curing methods.
Yeah.
It's amazing when you try to, when I teach it, I don't have to say, now you do this, unless it's summer.
Yeah.
Then you might have to do a couple extra things. But when it's that time of year, November coming into December, that is when it's a refrigerator outside. And that is when the flies are not so much of a threat. And when you gain flexibility in the plan, the narrative of the slaughter event, just because you can keep the carcass chilled, because you're just doing it outside. And so it really is the appropriate time to do it. The Feast of St. Andrew, November 30th, in many places in the Northern Hemisphere, was sort of like the beginning of the pig killing. So it was always a Christmas thing. You could look forward to your boar's head and lots of feasting on Christmas because you just killed the pigs, which is so appropriate. But that's when we'll be doing them. And like with all of our classes, I mean, the goal is not just to be acquainted with the whole process, because it's interesting. Sometimes we get people in the class, less frequently now, but it does happen every once in a while. They say, well, I just wanted to see what happens, where my meat comes from. That's what they say. And we always have to tell them, if only this is where your meat came from. Unfortunately, this is utterly sui generis. Nobody's meat comes from this farm and is harvested this way unless you do it yourself.
Which a lot of our students end up doing.
Yes, and that's the point. And so what you get to see, which I think is better than where your meat comes from, is where it ought to come from.
Yes.
And how simple the process is and how simple the narrative is, and consequently how cosmically goofy it is to do it any other way. It's so inefficient and ridiculous to ship, hundreds of thousands of pigs a day to 4 slaughterhouses in the entire country. That is a brand of insanity that is incalculable. It's ridiculous. And then ship it all over the country. And I'm thinking about this now because I'm writing an article on it. And so much of the abuses of the industrial meat system, so much of the waste, so much of the inhumanity, and the gory spectacle, the grossness of it, and the filth, which results in major health crises. Because the surest way to affect the most people with a nasty health issue is to slaughter all of the pork in the same place. Like, guaranteed. If one thing goes wrong, it goes wrong a bajillion times, and then it's shipped all over the country. But the simplest way to just opt out of that whole thing is the simplest solution of all. Just kill 2 pigs a year on your property. Just do it yourself. It's not like you have to be, you have to have this extraordinary virtue or skill that is hard won over years and years. It's really not that complicated. It is not complex. It's actually really simple. And once you see it, like the housewife seeing the guild butcher the lambs right behind the counter, once you see it, you get the narrative. You're like, oh, this can fit in my head. Now I don't need to outsource this to a bunch of automated and dangerous situations. Mm-hmm. And I can do it. And that's the goal with the family pig class. So that's why we keep them limited to 8 hands-on students. And so they're not just demonstrations. It's not me, flipping my knife around and showing everybody how to do it. It's not that. I mean, I shoot the pigs and then I'll stick them, but then I have the students catch the blood and do every single other step from then on out. And it's 2 pigs with 8 people. So there is lots of redundancy. People get to see things several times and do the whole process knife in hand. Mm-hmm. And when your knife is sharp and when you go through it once, then you can replicate it. Because one step leads to another. There's an inertia, a benevolent inertia to pig slaughtering that just pushes you to the next step. Yeah. And you can't help but take it, and it is far simpler than you think. And it's also where all of the best food comes from. Mm-hmm. The waste is not just reduced, it's eliminated. There is no waste. There's no loss. You gain everything in the harvest. Mm-hmm. In fact, the challenge is not to harvest everything. The challenge is to make your, your basket big enough to be able to receive everything. Because there's so much, it's overwhelming. It's the burden of abundance. You're racing to keep up with the yield of the pig rather than laboriously trying to extract everything out of it. It's all there, especially when you follow the traditional preparations.
Yeah, I mean, I would say a majority of the work, in terms of work, comes ahead of time. Mm-hmm. When you're trying to make your list of all the things you want to try to tackle and get all your ingredients ready, maybe have a few things prepared, like your pastry doughs or, so you just have that like mise en place kind of, you're ready so that when you get the fresh kidney, boom, you're like ready to go to prepare it. Yeah. And your liver, and you've even got like an order of operations, mm-hmm. Trying to use the innards, for instance, first while they're fresh, and then metering out which fresh meats you really want to get to before they go. Yeah. And then what you want to freeze. And then also like maybe your bacon comes last because that's what's taken the longest to cure, or your hams, mm-hmm. or then your prosciutto will be like 2 years later. So it just takes some time to kind of figure out how are like the logistics, the strategy. And that's actually what our class can help do too.
Yeah, I find that the cool, one of the unexpected things about it that I didn't anticipate when we got into it is that the most strategizing, and I would, in a way, almost the most work, it doesn't necessarily come when you shoot the pig and do the actual harvesting itself. Mm-hmm. It actually comes when it's time to eat it, which sounds very silly, but it actually turns the consumption not merely into this passive like injection of caloric energy, which is kind of how we've come to regard our food. It actually becomes a discipline. Eating becomes a discipline. And, it's not a burdensome one. This is a light burden to be disciplined to eat your own homemade bacon. This is not a major suffering, but it is a discipline. You have to think about it. It has to be premeditated. And so it's a management. Yeah. We're constantly managing the largesse of this swine, of this pig, mm-hmm. After all the harvesting. It's like we have to plan this out and we have to be diligent. And that's why it's nice to seize upon feast days, because it's at the end, a big glorious roast or something is work. Mm-hmm. It is work, objectively. To cook as much as we do and to do as much preparation for each dish as we do, that is work. It's just incredibly rewarding work. But like every good work, it does take discipline, mm-hmm. and planning and management. It's not passive. Yeah. And that's really the challenge. And so that's part of what we do in the family pig too, is what makes that easier, the whole utilization of the animal, is to simplify the cooking.
Yes.
And the utilization. True. Yeah. And fortunately, that's very easy to do. You just have to know 3 recipes and then you got it.
Yeah.
You can cook any part of any creature if you know how to braise, pan, fry, and roast. That's all you need. And so we cover that. But yeah. It's a family pig. It's a good class.
Yeah. So come this fall, and we, it's just such fun. Good people come, who are at varying degrees of their homesteading journey, and it shows you both the work side of things and also the celebratory, triumphant, side of things. We just got a full feast all 3 days lined up, and
so you don't get one without the other.
Yeah,
really. I was thinking about that. The centrality of culling, and I like the word cull too. I'm just gonna try not to make it a tangent, but no matter what you're deriving from an animal, if it's a sheep, if you're getting wool, a hide, milk, or just pasture management, you must kill them. You must. That's like that has to be the apex, the center of good management. Because the most damaging thing to any endeavor is extraneous dead weight. Should be dead, but it's not. Extraneous livestock that are superfluous, that are not, they're not just, not contributing to the economy or of your farm, to the management of your pasture, or to how much wool you need. They're positively detracting in a really damaging way. And so there's especially like if you're making cheese or dairy, all of it, every single item that we can derive from a creature. The thing, the job, the task that makes it possible and sustainable is the kill. You must kill. And that's why I like the word cull, because that's specifically, today we kind of use it just negatively, like you're culling something that is to be wasted. It's not servicing a purpose anymore, but it's actually kind of the exact opposite historically. It means you're picking out the best part, but it's specifically referring to killing with a tilas, with a purpose. Slaughter is kind of like such a weird word, but it seems a little less directed. Even I was reading too that butchers or slaughtermen in England, they didn't like the term abattoir.
Oh, really?
Probably because it was French.
Yeah.
But also they said explicitly it just means the fallen, like things that have fallen down.
Oh.
They're like, no.
It's too passive.
That's like a knacker. That's like the thing that just falls down because it expires from old age and disease and is dead. It's like, no, we are not. We're not. This is not an abattoir. This is a slaughterhouse.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And they were very particular about that. They hated the word abattoir. It's not just falling. And because they took their job very seriously. When there were small slaughterhouses decorating the landscape of the peasant village, there would be a lot of them. But the kill is essential. And it's actually the affection that the homesteader would have, or the peasant, for his animal, that would compel him to kill it. Yeah. Not the other way around. It is no kindness or affection to the animal to let it linger into a natural death, which is the most painful and unnatural thing you've ever seen. It's horrific.
The poor's head in hand bear I, bedecked with bays and rosemary.
How many people do you know who are building their home culture around seasonal harvest and feasting? Or that are hunting as you are for self-sufficiency and back-to-the-land values? Or that share your artist's passion for human-scale meatcraft? At FarmsteadMeatsmith.com, we've created a community of hundreds of omnivores from around the world with these shared goals, and 2 major places for them to learn from and inspire one another. First, we have our semi-annual hands-on educational event, The Family Pig, here at our Heartland homestead in Oklahoma. Come meet Brandon, get your elbows greasy, and over the course of 3 days, kill, cut, cure, and cook 2 pigs, completely. You'll rub those greasy elbows with other meatsmiths from around the country, sharing meals and conversations to inspire you for years to come. Secondly, for more remote learning, over at farmsteadmeatsmith.com, we host a purely digital membership program with an archive of film and textual resources 5 years deep now. And both our on-site classes and online program include access to our most unique and rewarding private community Facebook page, Meatsmith Table, which is the only international network by and for homesteaders harvesting animals on a domestic scale using traditional and regional methods. We've been told that our classes are life-changing and the membership program unparalleled in quality and quantity. To get a taste of our education, search farmsteadmeatsmith.com and our YouTube channel for our free films, conversations, and downloads. Explore how we and other meatsmiths across the globe may best come alongside you and support you in building your home around the harvest. Please head to farmsteadmeatsmith.com today.
And so in the slaughterhouses, they used to have a code emblazoned upon the walls. I was just redoing all of this research because I'm trying to write about it.
Okay.
But it looks like there's this thing called the Slaughterman's Creed, and it's really hard to find its provenance, where it comes from, where it started from. Okay. It's hard to cite. It's really hard to cite, like, where'd you find this? Because it was everywhere. Just like something that's ubiquitous is hard to cite, or that is open source. And the Slaughterman's Creed is one of them because it is everywhere. I read accounts where, some British slaughtermen, because I read English, some British slaughtermen saw it in a German slaughterhouse. It's like, okay, so it's translated from Germany. But then it also had a reputation of being on the walls, written on the walls of slaughterhouses on the continent. Which is how British people refer to continental Europe. But then even in like the 1901, 1902, it was on American slaughterhouses.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is interesting. And it's because, we had it here, and it's inscribed with King James English. So it has moral weight to it. It's high English. It's noble English to enhance the gravity of it. But it's Slaughterman's Creed, and it's very short, and it used to be written on the walls, on a wall, to remind the slaughtermen of the gravity of their job and of the reality of it. And nestled in it is even like a subtle reference to the golden rule. Yeah. Do unto others as you would have done unto you.
Wow.
Yeah. It's really interesting, which you wouldn't think in the context of a human-animal relationship, but there is one situation where that kind of applies. But that's the basis of the grave moral obligation of killing an animal well. And it goes like this, Slaughterman's Creed. Let's see if I can remember it. Thine is a task of blood. Discharge thy task with mercy. Let thy victim feel no pain. May sudden blow bring death, such death as thou thyself would ask.
Wow.
That's the Slaughterman's Creed.
Wow.
So, they had to take their job seriously.
Yeah.
It's a task of blood.
Yeah. I think a lot of people get themselves into high water if they don't respect that.
Yeah, and the cool thing about that kind of moral obligation is that it contextualizes the act for you more properly. And I like how it's clearly a duty. I mean, it's clearly an obligation. Whereas I think when we, as modern people, conceive of slaughtering an animal well, we sort of sneak in this notion that we need to be super sorrowful and super sad and very emotive about it. And it's actually the opposite, because a duty is a thing that you do even when it doesn't feel good. And especially when it doesn't feel good. You do it in spite of your appetitive, in spite of the repugnance of your nature to the duty itself. If you have a natural repugnance to killing, well, it's actually your duty to kill well.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it. Thine is a task of blood. So just go ahead. Let's start with that premise. Here you have a duty. Guess what? It's bloody. Full, that's where we start. So
that's a beautiful line.
Yeah, you kind of have to, as a slaughterman, you end up having to sacrifice the kind of the self-flattery from intense emotion when it comes to killing animals. You're not actually permitted the luxury of having an intense emotional reaction, because you have to be sharp and you have to be totally ruled by your intellect. And the thing about overpowering emotional moments is that you are blinded to what you're doing. That's the nature of excessive emotion, is that you don't know what you're doing anymore. You actually cannot perceive a thing when you're perceiving it through the lens and through the tint that your emotion puts on it.
Right.
And my whole experience bears this out, that the animals that suffer the most at their death are the ones that are slaughtered by the most affectionate and so-called compassionate people. Every time. There's no exception to this.
Right.
This is an absolute law.
Yeah.
They suffer the most. And it's because in their emotional state, they make errors.
Yeah.
They make judgment errors, and they're not actually thinking about the animal nor understanding its nature. And so if you're not understanding the animal, you can't kill it properly. You can only cause it great suffering. And so it actually ends up being a very selfish experience. And it's very frustrating to witness as a slaughterman.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's
just
very
like,
sad.
here, give me the knife.
Yeah. Right. Unfortunately, I can see it coming a mile away now, and most people don't want to do it. They just it's a precipitous emotion. So most people don't want their animal to suffer.
Oh, okay.
They just don't know the mechanism to prevent it.
Yeah.
They don't know that actually you have to shut down. You have to not shut down, but you have to, what's the word? Renounce with the full force of your will. Your emotion at that moment for the sake of the animal, so that your mind is clear, so you can perceive your duty and do it well.
For the sake of the family you're going to feed.
For the sake of the family you're going to feed. And because that's the telos, that's the final cause of it. And I think you do owe, as a matter of justice, and the animal as painless a death as it is possible to achieve.
Sure.
Because it's never going to be absolutely painless, but just in justice, I think that's owed. That's part of the deal. It's part of the pact, the contract with our domesticated lifestyle.
Yeah. It's very priestly, the act itself. Thine is a task of blood.
Yeah.
And I see the similarity in some of the good priests I've come across. Just shut down your own passion, and you gotta see the thing through to its end.
Yeah, and that is actually, that's why I love these old British colloquial phrases or poems, because they carry so much. And they carry so much because of the conflict that the English people have been through.
Sure.
And because especially in that Slaughterman's Creed, and every version of it, and there are some versions that I've found, but it's all the same. The 4 lines are basically the same. They use the term they use for the animal is very particular. It's not let thy pig feel no pain. Let thy livestock feel no pain. It's let thy victim feel no pain. That that is sacrificial language.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Sure. Yeah,
that's where we get the word vicarious.
Okay.
Substitutionary.
Yeah.
It's vicarious.
Yeah.
Victim.
Mm-hmm.
That is the language of sacrifice.
Mm.
A victim is something that is killed in sacrifice.
Well, yeah. I mean, the first time I saw you slaughter a lamb back on your parents' homestead, and I was like right up there because I think I was pregnant with our first. Like we were just newly married, and I remember feeling, wow, you're doing this, and I don't have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's the victimhood or the vicariousness on multiple levels.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, the lamb is dying so that we can keep living. But then also you're doing this act so that I don't have to, and you know, your parents didn't have to, and our children don't have to, you know, and someone else will take up that baton at some point. But that is also kind of a priestly, you know, intercessional kind of act. It was really, it made an impact on me. It was one of those memories that was just burned in there, you know? Yeah.
Anyway, we're not talking about that right now.
That's not the point. No, I'm glad you brought it up. It's essential to families, I think, to go through understanding that part of life.
Well, and I would say too, if you're going to do any agriculture whatsoever, you have to learn how to kill things when they need to be killed.
Yeah.
If you're going to manage any herd or flock or grouping of livestock, you've got to be able to kill when needed.
That's right.
It's
part of it.
Just from the purely agricultural perspective, you know, from the management of the resource that is your land, you've got to be able to drop animals. I
feel like that's a true thing about life, because the more skills that I acquire as a mom, as an educator, in the kitchen, learning how to sew, how to create bouquets with flowers. I mean, a florist's job, like any job of creativity where you're positively bringing something about that was not there before. There's, I think of it in this term, but collateral damage. There is waste. And that's hard for certain personality types, like to let go of the discard.
Yeah.
You know, that there's...
Or the scurf.
Yes.
That's the old word for discard.
Okay. Yeah. Exactly. One of them is scurf. We have to be able to let things just fall and go by the wayside, so that, I mean, it's like kind of like the 80-20 rule almost, maybe, but yeah, and it's hard, especially for a choleric kind of personality. Like, no, we have to extract every ounce of energy out of this thing, you know. It's like, yeah, but I've got other things to do in my day, and I've got how many kids now, and like, I have to make these choices that end up resulting in waste or discard or you know, it's kind of like that cracking. You have to crack a few eggs if you're going to make an omelet kind of mentality. But it's just a much grander. It's on a bigger scale when you're dealing with a flock or a herd. Yeah, but it's the same principle.
It is. That's why I really like the typology of the compost pile.
Okay.
If you could just like stretch it out as a concept. It's so great.
That's true.
There's no waste in a compost. If you have a cooking compost pile, you have no waste on your farm.
Well, and the pig too itself is kind of like it consumes a lot of the waste from the kitchen.
Yeah, because it's happened to me before where I had a little tiny animal, you know, chicken, get half mauled, of course, by some predator, or even I had a little rambling. Such a bummer. He died because I think he was eating too much alfalfa, which I was feeding to the cows. and he was getting in there and munching a bunch of it. And they get little, they're like kidney stones, but they'll get lodged in the pizzle, little calcium deposits of the lamb because they have there's just too much calcium in alfalfa. Huh. And young ramlings are most susceptible to it. So I think that's what took him out. But short version is he was dead. He died. And it's just a bummer. It's just a little guy. He had no meat. He was very young. Could have cooked him. And, I've definitely eaten a partially mangled guinea fowl carcass too after the raccoon got the first bite. So I'm not above eating these things. But if you don't have time for that, but you do have a compost pile, it's great. I can send that little lamb right back to the pastures that he was born on, but in the form of compost. And if all you need is wood chips, and if you bury him in there, it's remarkable. Within a couple weeks, he was gone. Wow. And a couple weeks later, our dog found his skull, and he enjoyed that. But it's remarkable. If you've really got a cooking pile, you can return everything to the dust from which it came.
That's great.
And all the scurf gets turned back into soil.
Yeah. Well, why don't we transition to something more elevating? I wanted to mention, and this is more the life end of the spectrum, because we've been talking about the death end of the spectrum. But you've also this summer been rotating cattle.
Yeah.
From my vantage point, it looks successful to me. But I think it's kind of like the first time where it's really been working.
Yeah.
Would you say that, or?
Yeah, rotational grazing. I have it's a day. I do it once a day now. I was doing it twice a day. I could probably pick it up again, but I rotate ruminants. There's a thing about ruminants: sheep, camels, cows, goats, some monkeys. They actually no, but actually yes, some monkeys do ferment a lot. But the ruminants, in particular. They have this multi-chambered stomach, and they just stuff a sack in their gut with minimally chewed grass, just lawn clippings, basically. And they do that for a little while, and then they go sit down, and they burp it up and chew it again and swallow it back down and ferment it in another chamber where there's lots of bacteria that breaks down the cellulose. That's what cows do. That's what sheep do. And it's incredible because only those little microbes can break down cellulose. And so the reason that cows work and can produce meat is because they host these bacteria in their gut, which basically makes cows, and sheep, they're at the bottom, if we believe in a food chain. They're at the bottom of the food chain. They're one step up from grass.
Yeah.
That's where they're at.
That's true. As big as they are.
Yeah. And they do it so well, especially if you manage them. And I have been rotating them. I keep them all together, and I think Greg Judy, who's in Missouri, who's a farmer you've all heard of, who rotates grass, he calls it a flurd combination of sheep and cows.
Oh, okay.
A flock and a herd is a flurd. And that's what I've got. 3 steers, they're longhorns. We're going to get 3 more pretty soon, actually. And I have 9 sheep right now. And so I just move them with polywire, 2 strands. 2 strands. One just lower than my hips and one about 12 inches off the ground.
Okay.
And it's on plastic step-ins. And they're on geared reels that I can hook into a power supply that I have around most of the perimeter fence. And it doesn't take me long to move them. That's why it's so doable with this technological ability with the wire. But they respect it. I don't get breakouts. Something has to spook them for them to break out of their little paddock. And that's the only time I found them. even with windstorms, we'll get branches laying on it, and they're just not, unless they're heavily motivated, usually by fear, by the flight response, they just won't leave. They'll stay in there.
As long as they have food.
As long as they have food and water. Yeah.
And shade.
So if yours are getting out, it could be thirst, hunger, but also they could just be bad and you need to eat them.
Oh, yeah.
Some of them, that's something you can select for. You cull for that.
Okay.
You cull for the animals to stay in their fence. That's one of the deals of the contract with domesticated animals is they have to stay around. That's part of the contract.
Yeah. I'll
kill you nicely. I'll remove all predators and I will feed you very well. But you have to stay here. and don't hurt us. You can't hurt us. You have to be nice.
Yeah.
That's part of the contract.
Yeah.
So you can select for that. But it's been great. And I think the reason it's been working, so I'm at my third pass now.
Oh.
So we've been over, we're probably, it's going quick, isn't it? 2/3 of the way through my third pass since, we came out of winter, since the grass started growing. We're at our third pass, and I probably have a little less than 7 acres. So we're at pass number 3 now.
Okay. And that's
over the land.
That's allowing the land to rest for the appropriate amount of time to where you don't get, so that the grass can grow, and it has been growing.
It has.
We've got the second spring happening in the middle of August. But then also there's something with the parasite load is less. Right?
Yeah, and there's more science to that I've not done.
Okay.
But usually they say, your parasite cycle is 60 days. And so if you can keep a paddock without animals on it, and it's just resting for 60 days, you significantly reduce the parasite load. And I haven't been counting.
Okay.
Because I don't know what I would do. Like, let's say maybe we'll have some people reach out to us and tell me how to do this. But let's say I'm ready to move to the next paddock, but the animals were there only 40 days ago. What am I going to do? I'm not going to keep them on the paddock they're on. They'll graze it to the dirt. That's not good.
Probably just
what do I do?
Less animals or smaller paddocks.
I have nowhere else to put them.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure how to incorporate that other than by acquire more land.
Right. That's
but our land is fixed.
Yeah.
In its quantity. So.
Yeah.
Or, haul them up into a sacrifice area and feed them hay for several days, which seems to defeateth the purpose.
Yeah.
Because the cool thing about this is you permit the grass to grow again.
Okay.
And so they can actually go back and eat, nibble on the same plant that they've already eaten twice. And every time they eat it, that plant puts out more. It's incredible. The grass is designed to be consumed. And it enhances its growth. And I think that this year it's really worked because we got another spring.
Yeah, last year was an odd summer.
It was hard. And I've asked around, and apparently, according to one of our friends, Ted told me that this has been like a 5 to 7 year pattern where we actually get rain in August. It hasn't always been that way. But I cannot think of, and it's like cheating. It's like, it's unbelievable. We had nothing like this in Washington. We did get tons of rain, but we also got a whole lot of nothing in the summer, and everything would burn out and die. And people would be feeding hay in the Pacific Northwest in the summer.
It's true.
It's terrible. But here, we just got over 2 inches in the past couple weeks. And the soil fluffed up again and absorbed all this water, and the grass just started shooting up again. It's amazing. And that rain really enhanced it, because I was getting worried 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
I was like, oh, things are starting to get brown. It's going to be hard to make this third pass over the land without supplementing. And then we got the rain.
Yeah.
So.
It's nice.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's fun. The extent of my science, the extent of my ability as a rotational grazier is I walk outside every day and I look at the animals and I look at the grass. And I look at the left side of the ruminants because that's where they fill their backpack. It's on the left side.
Oh.
They fill their, that's where they're, what do they call it on lawnmowers? The bag that catches all the grass clippings. That's where it is. It's on the left side. And so if you see a deep indented triangle indicating a vacuity, an emptiness, just in front of the pelvis, then he wasn't able to fill his gut. And you can only do that so many times before you really start to inhibit the metabolism and slow the growth and compromise that animal's health. So whatever you got to do, you got to keep that little triangle full, plump, not indented. And so I look at that every day, very closely. And then I look at the grass and see how much they nibble and how big the space is. And if I see, well, it looks like they were able to fill their triangle today with that size paddock, and then I kind of judge like how dense is the grass in the next spot, and then size the paddock accordingly because it seemed to work yesterday. So we'll do about the same today, unless it's more sparse forage in the next one for whatever reason. I'll give them a little more space, but that's the extent of it. That's my whole science. And if the grass grows super fast, which it does in the spring, and it's kind of doing right now, then I move them not so much just to keep their paunch full, but just to keep up with clipping the grass, to prevent the grass from just going to seed right away, growing so tall and fast that it goes to seed, and that it loses lots of its nutrients for them when it does that. So during those periods, I'm just moving them twice a day, just to keep the grass clipped.
Oh, wow.
And encourage blade growth rather than seeds. Yeah. But in the end, it depends on the day. It depends on the paddock. But it only takes me like 10 to 20 minutes to move them. Yeah. And it depends on the paddock. But sometimes it's very quick and very easy. And I move the water with them.
And you know what? Our 14-year-old can do it too.
Yeah, Mollis can do it.
I mean, he's a capable young man, but that's kind of the thing too, is if you have a teenager that is capable, they can do it too. Yeah. It's pretty simple. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I do for fun. I move the ruminants. It's so enjoyable, actually.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's actually a lovely chore.
Oh, good. We always come in a little sweaty because it is Oklahoma October or August.
Yeah, and I dress like this when I do it. Yeah. Long sleeve, button my top collar. I have decided that full coverage is the only way to work. Yeah. In the heat index when it's 114 degrees because it's crazy humid. You just have to cover up totally. That way your clothes get soaked, and then it's more efficient than just sweating without clothes on. You actually you're able to stay cooler just walking around, sloshing around in totally wet clothes than you would be with just a t-shirt.
And you don't have that sun beating down on your skin. Yeah. Your unshielded skin. Yeah. Which really is what bakes you. Yeah. I have an experience with that. Yeah. It is, heat exhaustion is real here.
Yeah, it's bad. Gotta be careful.
And it starts when your muscles are literally breaking down. Your skin, under your skin. Yeah. It's like starting to cook. And so it like takes all of the nutrients from your innards to export to your exterior limbs and everything. And then you're done.
That's bad.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why you gotta like rehydrate, get all the minerals and everything back. Yeah. Because it just goes straight to your muscles. Wow. So yeah, covering is a good thing. Yeah. I think you learned that trick from construction workers from Latin America. Right. In Southern California. Oh, yeah. That's how they dress.
Black hoodies with their hoods up.
I know.
And it's 110 degrees outside. That's how you do it. Yeah. It's true.
I know us gringos are not very smart sometimes.
But yeah, it is enjoyable. It's a lovely job because they're always so excited to move to the next paddock.
Oh, I should come out with you sometime.
Yeah, sometimes they jump and kick, they're like, yeah. The sheep are first. They line up right away. They know exactly where I'm going to open it to get them in. And they're always led by the weather. There's a castrated male who we're going to harvest soon. Mm-hmm. But he's always right there, right up front. He knows where the food is. He's really good at snacking. But they love it. And then they get in there, and then the cows get in. It's so funny. The cows move very slowly and passively to it. But the moment they cross that border into the new paddock, then they start to like bounce around and kick their legs. Yeah. and they run. And it's pretty cute.
So actually, if you come to the lamb class, there's another plug, you can kind of see that whole system a little bit, right?
I'm going to do it every day.
Yeah.
Got to move them every day.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Once you start, if you really want the benefits of it, you got to keep up. You got to do it.
Thank you so much, Meatsmiths, for listening to our take on all things meat making, householding, and culture keeping. We hope it's helped you in growing your home around the harvest.
This conversation will be continued in a forthcoming Part 2 episode. Thanks for listening, and peace be with you.